This is part 2 in a series of free tutorials covering the build of the robot I used in these recent Instagram posts. If you haven't already seen part 1 of this series where we build the head and animate the teeth, please click the link above and I'll also put it in the description. In this tutorial we'll be building the body, arms and legs and prepping for animation. We'll be using the volume builder, so you'll need R20 or above. I'll also show you another way of lowering the poly count on the models. Let me know in the comments below if there are any other posts of mine you'd like a tutorial on, and please remember to like and subscribe and you'll get notifications of when I upload new videos. Okay, let's get started. Before we get started, in the comments of the last video, Peter asked a question about the PSR button I have in this custom palette. So I'm going to quickly show you how you can bring in these custom buttons rather than having to go through the menus. It's very simple. If you go up to Windows, Customization, Customize Palettes, and then in here you can filter for any tool that's in Cinema4D. So let's choose PSR. So you've got the reset PSR there. You can then drag that to anywhere that's available on our layout and click out, and then that's it, it's locked there. Then we go back into customization. So then you see everything's got these blue lines around it, so that means it's kind of editable. You can double click on it and that will get rid of it. Okay, I can talk about that in another tutorial, so let's just get on with the modeling of the robot. Right, so let's zoom out from the model we created in the last video, and I'm going to hide the stage for now as we don't need it. And let's create another cube, and this is going to be the kind of main part of the body. I'm going to change the sizes. I've got them from my last video, or my last setup for this. So 345, 320 by 225, that's kind of the basis. And that's in the wrong direction, so let's just rotate that through 90 degrees. Then if we look from the front, the next thing I'm going to do is turn on fillet. I'm going to make that 20. We'll call this body main. Then I'm going to copy that, and we're going to call this body, I'll call it skirt. It's kind of like the bottom piece of the robot where his legs will go into. Let's actually change the dimensions on this one. We'll make this 320 by 125 by 200. Okay, and we'll have that so it's just sitting on that midway line. And we'll make another duplicate, and then this is actually going to be the cutout that the legs are going to kind of poke into. So I'm going to give that like a radius of 10, and if we zoom in, you're not actually going to see this, but we'll make that about 286. We'll leave it at 125 in the height, and I don't know, say 170, and then we'll just position that so it's going to cut out. So that's kind of the main part of the body. Let's get a volume builder and measure. I'm going to set the builder to voxel size of 2, and let's put all of our items in, and then I'll do this like legs cut out. So we want these two main items to be joined together, but the legs cut out, we want that to be subtraction. So let's add that as a subtraction. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on. Right, okay, so now let's bring in a cylinder. And what I want to do for this is actually kind of have like a little divot that the neck will sit in. So the neck isn't just kind of floating above the robot. I'll bring that in, and I'll call this neck, and then we'll subtract that out. So you see it's just a little bump so that is sitting in. And what I might actually do is put a cap on that, maybe of like 5, just so we've got a little bit of rounding. Just makes it look a little bit more interesting. Okay, and then we'll duplicate that, and we're going to call this shoulders, and we'll change the orientation to plus Z. Let's change the length. Let's make this about, say, 66, 375. Now we know it's centered, and we just want to have this kind of roughly at the top. Okay, so you know, a little way just underneath this kind of end of this curve. Let's add this in, and we can leave that as is. We'll add a smoothing on that, will kind of bring everything together a bit. I'll just set this to 1. So now we can get to work on this kind of front panel, and to do that I'm going to bring in a rectangle. I'm going to rotate that through 90 degrees. And let's bring it to the front. And I'm going to change the width and height to this to 275 by 175. And then I'm going to turn on rounding and set this to like 35. Okay, and then what I want to do is have it so it's just sitting on the surface of the robot, and we'll make it like, I don't know, about halfway down, maybe about there. We'll bring that into the volume builder and then leave it at the top. Now we're going to, the volume builder can actually give volume to the spline. So we're going to change the radius of this to 5. And then what we might do is actually just bring it out just a little bit more. There you go. So it's kind of sitting out. And then our other panel, we'll put another panel that's actually going to sit on that space. Actually, we could do that now. So let's copy that rectangle, and we're going to change the size of this slightly to 255 by 155, and then I think this rounding will change because it's going to be tighter, see, because we're inside. And I'm going to add an extrude on there, and we want to make sure we're extruding through the right direction. Let's zoom in. Not that one. Okay, so let's extrude that by 10. Then we're going to add some fillet caps on here. We'll give this like a radius of 10. No, actually, maybe we'll give it a radius of 5, and maybe for steps we'll up that to something like 10. Give it a lot of rounding. We'll call this front panel. And if you want to just make sure all your PSRs are correct, let's take the rectangle out, put the front panel inside, reset PSR, and then flip those back over again, and then see now your X, Y, and Z sort of axis is in the right place. So let's just sit that in. Okay, so that's coming along. And next we can probably do the kind of little buttons and gizmos at the top. So let's get another cylinder, rotate that through 90. Let's bring this down, bring it out. Let's make it like about 15 in the radius and 40 in the height. So we're just going to have this kind of poking through, and we'll kind of line it up. I mean, you can kind of riff on this and do whatever you want, but this is what I set up in my render. So I could put a couple of buttons here, then one over here, and then we're actually going to cut out and then have the buttons. We're going to kind of have this as like a dimple around the edge, and then we're going to cut a hole out, and then we'll have the buttons separately later. So if we rename all these, if you select them all at once, go to basic and just say call that button edge, so it will rename all of those the same. Let's copy all those, and we'll call these button cutout. And all of these ones, I'm just going to bring them a little bit further forward, and then under object I'm going to change this to 8 in the radius. Now what we can do is in the we can actually group these together. So let's group these and call these button edges, bring them into our volume builder, and then our cutouts objects, we'll group those and we'll call these button cutouts. Spell that correctly. Bring that in. Then under our volume builder, let's bring these underneath the smoothing, and then the button cutouts, we'll set that to subtract. So it's given us our kind of little sections where our buttons are going to sit. And then if I duplicate our button cutouts, see now we've got objects that fit perfectly inside those. So let's select all of those, under caps, fill it. Let's have a look, what are we looking at? Change this to 10, there you go. So now we've got these little buttons that sit outside. We'll just reposition those. And let's call these buttons. And we'll call this body. Okay, and I'm gonna save this. Okay, and then I'd like a little chunk kind of cut out here so we can add in another box. And we can basically do the same thing. So let's just bring it down. Let's go into the front view actually. Well, the right view in this instance. And let's just kind of do something. I think originally when I made this, I thought, oh, maybe I could make this like a tape deck or something. But I ended up just putting a bar in there. But that's something you could have a play with. Or maybe have like a ribbon of, you know, like a printout of a receipt kind of come out of something like this. So let's, oh, not in the body, head. Let's bring that in under our volume builder. Put that under the smoothing. I guess we should rename this. So let's call this, we'll call this block. And we're going to subtract. And then again, I'm going to copy that. We'll still call this block because I'm not 100% sure what it is. It's just something that we can animate. Let's make that 8 and then we can reposition that. So that's kind of like our little gizmos on the front. Right now I want to kind of put some detail on this panel. And the way I'm going to do that is get a tube. And let's put it in the plus X, yep, there we go. And we want to kind of make this like dial shape, so we can do that by slicing the object. Go to slice. I actually want to change this to 30 to 150. And then if I go into that front view, we can rotate it. So let's rotate this by 90 degrees. And then I'm going to change my inner radius to 70 and outer to 133. So now we've got this kind of dial pattern, and we'll go into our front view. I'm going to do a couple of things. So I want to cut it out of this front panel, and you could add more details and bits onto this front panel. So we need another volume builder and measure. So let's bring those in. And like we did before, I'm going to put these under here and PSR it so everything's lined up. Put the panel underneath that. We'll probably set this to 2. Put smoothing in. I'll set that to 1. And then let's grab our tube, stick that in, and we'll call this like dial cutout. And we'll put that under the smoothing and say subtract. So that's our cutout. But you'll see it's affecting what's inside. It actually looks like I've moved it by accident. Let me just turn these two off. I seem to have repositioned. What's gone there? Hang on, we're having technical difficulties. Let me just bring this forward. What's that? Wow, that's very strange. Okay, I've extruded this through the wrong way, so that's the right way. Okay, let's reset that in the position. Turn these back on. That's better. So now we've got our cutout. But you see it's cut out, but it's obviously we're seeing the inside of the robot. So let's just get that dial cut out. We'll call this front panel. And then go to the body, drag that in, and we'll cut it out of the robot as well. So let's bring that in under the smoothing and say subtract. And you see how it's important to name everything because now we're getting quite a few layers in here. Let's push this back in a little bit further. Maybe not about that far, just so I've got a bit more depth to it. Now, what I did in mine is actually made this kind of a bit bigger. So I changed the inner radius on this to like 20. And this was partly so that I was thinking of putting a light in here or having things extruded. I didn't actually use it in the end, but I guess it'll give you an idea for, you know, you could have other things going on inside of him. But let's turn that front panel on. And there we've got that you could put a light down there inside that's blasting some light up. We want to add in the details on that kind of front panel, so let's save this. Now let's go to mograph, and we'll bring in a cube, and I'm going to make this 5 by 10 by 5. So this is going to be kind of the little bars that go around the edge. So we'll make this radial, and then we can see we've got this start and end angle. Well, we can match the start and end angle that we did for our dial cutout, which was in our slice 30 to 150. So let's just make that the same here. So 30 to 150. Let's up the count to like 20, and the radius, if I zoom out, we can see actually where they are. I'm going to need to rotate, so let's rotate this by 90, and then we probably need to rotate it 90 degrees this way. Now let's move this up. Now we know the center is actually down here, because the center should be the same as the center of the dial cutout, so we can probably just turn these off so we don't freak the machine out, put these under the dial cutout and reset the PSR. We know that that is the same center position. Obviously it's rotated incorrectly, but we can rotate this by 90, or yeah, that's set to 0, and we know that that is correct. We just need to change the radius, so let's up this radius. Oh no, maybe not. 140, maybe a bit less than that. Okay, it's not quite right in the angle, so let's just do a little shift, and then our cube, we'll call this marker short, and those kind of dials have long and short markers, so let's call this one marker long, and let's make this one 30 in length. And you see it duplicates, it says you know, because we've got two different sizes, it just iterates between the two. So there's kind of our markers, and what we'll do is push that in, and maybe we'll push it to the back. Maybe that's too deep, so that's the motorbike again. Okay, let's just push it to about here. Then in the body, let's I'll turn all this off. Maybe we'll just bring this out a little, so it's kind of intersecting, or starting to intersect with those markers. That's too much. Let's push it back, maybe about there. And you can make them thicker or wider, but there's your kind of markers on the inside. And my idea was that was like a power meter or something like that. So for the power meter, we're going to need to actually have a little marker, a dial. Let's save this. So for that, let's create a circle. I'm going to scale this right down. I'm going to set the PSR the same as in here. So I'm just going to put that under the cloner and set the PSR so it's centered, so we know that the dial is going to be able to rotate in the right position. It's pointing the wrong way, so let's just change that. Actually, I'm going to set that to -90, so that's exactly the same. I'm going to change this, XZ. Let's make that editable, and then grab the top point, and we'll just bring that up, and then we'll shift these Bezier markers, handles, so we can make that into a point. And then let's get the extrude, drag the circle into the extrude. We want to extrude it in the right direction, not like I did last time, in the wrong direction. I want to reset my PSR. I want my extrude to be under the circle, so I can kind of see this axis, and that so that we're able to, you know, rotate it correctly. So let's just zoom in a little bit. I'll bring this out. Yeah, that's not extruded in the right way. Oh no, hang on, what is going on? Oh, it is that way again. Okay, let's make that 10 in that way, and then maybe 5. So we'll, down the line, we've now got that extrude, and we've got the axis point set up, so we've got that set up to be able to animate later on down the line. And we could animate something moving in the background as well, but let's just leave that for now. Let's just make sure we name everything. So we'll call this pointer. That's our block. These are markers. And let's just actually group all these items together, and we'll call that front panel, even though some are inside and some are outside. We'll group these together and we'll say, call those something like top parts. It's just a good idea just to kind of keep track of everything. Everything goes in a folder called body. This is going to help us down the line if all our PSRs are correct and everything, so that we can animate properly. So that's all those bits. There's just a couple of little details to add. So I'm going to bring in a rectangle, and let's rotate this through 90 degrees. And then I want to make it kind of the same shape as the robot. So I'm going to make that 345 by 245. I think that's kind of what our shape was before. Let's bring this up. Let's turn on rounding and make that 20, which I believe is what we used before. And under the body, we're going to drag this rectangle in. Let's see what that looks like. It looks like I made that too wide. So let's say for the height, maybe 220, 30. Yeah, I think 230 is good. It looks rough because we want to actually have it under the smooth layer. So it's just adding a little bump, like a little bit of detail to denote that's kind of the top. And then I think I will duplicate that, and we'll put one kind of down the bottom. Drag that in. Drag that in. So that is the main basis of our body. So next we'll do the arms and legs. In the comments of the last video, Ashay mentioned that I use the polygon reduction tool to make the give you less polygons, so that the mesh is less heavy. And I forgot, and he mentioned it, and I'm glad he did, that there is actually another option in the volume builder to bring down the amount of polygons. So if you go into the you've got the volume builder, if you go to the volume mesher, so you've got this threshold range, and then we've got this adaptive. So if I go into garage shading with lines and zoom in, you'll see the this threshold range actually, it seems to like increase or decrease the amount of mesh around the voxel. So I'm not 100% sure why you would use that one, so we'll leave that. But under here, adaptive, this actually will reduce the number of polygons, you see. Now it can get pretty chunky pretty quickly, but you can actually save quite a bit of polygon space just by maybe going to like 1 or 2%. You see that's really reduced the polygons in these kind of larger, flatter areas, but then we've left more detail around the edge where it's needed. So that's pretty nice. So thanks for him for pointing that out, because I think this actually is probably a better way of doing it. The polygon reduction tool is probably better if you've got a model that's already editable and that's the only option you've got to get the polygons down. So go with this option. So let's do the same to the front panel. We'll just bring this up to 2%, and that's just kind of really cleaned it up. Let's go in. It still looks the same. You could argue maybe you could reduce it. Oh, not 15. But once we've got our materials and everything on there, the good thing that we've got with Volume Builder is that it just means we can model something like this pretty quickly rather than doing traditional polygon modeling. Okay, so that's our main body done. So what I'm going to do is save this, and then I'm going to, like I did before, I'm going to save a copy and then call this one, yeah, part 2, and we'll call it Unbroken. Then I'm going to go back to my original part 2, and then I'm going to break these apart. So let's just make these front panel editable and the body editable. Now I'm happy with that. Now we'll need parts from it. Actually, the one bit I know I need for building the arms is the shoulders, because I want to get that position, that PSR. So let's just copy and paste that, and then we'll make that editable. Right, so let's create one, and then we'll flip it, and that will create the other. So we'll start off using this shoulder. We'll bring this to the side. We just want to kind of have it offset slightly, and we'll make this the initial part. So let's just make this, we'll keep the same width, but we'll change the height to like 15. So we're going to kind of give it this kind of toy-like a mechanism, but it's got this kind of toyness to it. Just make sure that's sitting on the edge, and let's duplicate that. Let's call this end. Right, this one about 52 in the depth. Let's bring that along, and we're going to make this into the we're going to make a volume builder mesher for this. So I'm just going to kind of start putting the parts together, and then we'll put the mesher on. So let's duplicate that again. We'll call this one main, and this is like the shoulder section. The radius for this I'm going to change to something like 36, and this is going to be like the connection between the two. Actually, sorry, no, 36 high and like 60 in the width. That's just going to kind of connect these two objects. Maybe it's better if I put this in the builder and mesher. And I want to make sure, importantly, that these are connected to that end section for the PSR. Let's bring these back up, and let's drop all of these items in. Let's set the voxel size to 1. And you see we've got all these facets, so on the rotational segments, let's just up that to like 100, just to smooth it out for now. And we will put smoothing tag on to kind of blend all these bits together. So this shoulders section, I'm going to kind of bring that slightly in, so we've got some sort of connection, and then we'll kind of offset that a little bit. Okay, right, so now we'll got main, I'll call this connect. So with our main, I'm going to copy that, and this one I'm going to make like 33, and then I'm going to kind of stick that inside. I'm going to cut that out with a subtract, and then I'm going to call this like bolt. So imagine this is like the bolt coming from the robot to the arm. So let's give it some more cap radius, and let's just inset it a little bit. And when we put the smoothing on, actually let's put the smoothing on. See, that's going to kind of bring that all together, make it sit nicely. Okay, so with our main, let's actually just rename this cutout. Let's copy that, and then we're going to move this down about 160, and this is going to be like the elbow, but we're going to change the radius of it to, let's say 55 by 50, and then we're going to duplicate that. We'll call this elbow main. We'll call this cutout, and I will call it elbow joint. This one will make the radius lower. We'll make that like 27. We'll make this 60 just so it pokes out, and then we'll bring both of those in. Elbow joint, put all these underneath. Elbow joint I'm going to subtract, And then we want to kind of connect the two of these, so we're going to need to bring in a cube. And I'll just turn these off, and then what I want to do is just put this under here and set the PSR just so I get it into like the right position, so I'm in the right zone. And we can kind of change the scaling on this, so I'll probably make this like 40, maybe about 150, and let's say 100. Okay, so this is going to be the connection between the top and our elbow. Let's drag that on. Let's turn these both on, see what we're looking at. See, that's cutting through, so we need to make sure that the layering is correct. So that cube we want underneath the elbow joint, so see the elbow joint then subtracts. Now to connect to the other part, we need something for this to turn through, so it kind of makes sense, like a slot, so one connects to the other. So I'm going to duplicate that cube, and let's bring it down, and let's kind of scale it and make it thinner. Let's put in some actual figures. I'm going to make this like 25 by 100 by 160, say. I need to rotate that so it's in the correct angle. It's something like that. I think I'm going to put a fillet on here, maybe like 10. I'm just going to bring this up kind of, I don't know, halfway. Stick that under the volume builder, and I'm going to subtract that. So now we've got this kind of joint that our bottom half of the arm is going to connect into. So what I'm going to do is get, let's have a look at our elbow joint. I'm going to copy that, and the first thing is we want to leave an elbow joint there because that's a connection between the two. I'm going to copy it again, and this is going to be what you would think would be like the wrist. And I'm going to move this down again like about 160. So the top and bottom parts of the arm are kind of roughly the same size. I'll leave that there. And then I'm going to change the radius of this, 46 by 58. And I'm going to rename this one actually arm top. And let's get call this one arm main. Let's copy that, and then I'm going to bring that down again, and we're going to kind of connect these two. We're going to probably make that a little bit thinner, bring that up. Now what we need to do is get this connection going, so let's get another volume builder and mesher. And now for these, the important thing is for the PSR to be in the correct place. We want it to be in this elbow joint place. So let's bring it down to elbow joint, set that PSR. We're going to rename this, so I don't get confused. It's called that shoulder bolt. So let's bring that down the bottom. And these are the parts we're actually working with. That elbow joint we don't need to use at the minute. So let's just have arm main and wrist. Okay, what I'm going to do is copy that elbow joint, and we go to the front view so we can see what's going on. I want to kind of cut out sections, so let's bring the size of this down. I'm going to turn the caps off, but let's increase the height. No, not the height, sorry, the radius to something like 60. Yeah, make that like 20 in the height. And then what I want to do is kind of cut a chunk out of either side, so it looks like it makes sense that our bottom arm can actually turn. It's actually got a section to move through. So let's just copy that again, move it over this side. And let's have a look in our front section. Now I seem to have got caps turned off, so turn them back on. I don't want the fillet, that's what I don't want. Let's bring those both in, and we'll call these cutouts. And then let's subtract both of those. And let's turn up our voxel size to like down to like 1 and add a smoothing on. That kind of brings it all together. So you see now it looks like it kind of makes more sense. It looks like we can get this volume measure, turn it round. I mean, obviously we don't want it to go past a certain point, but it kind of makes sense that this object can rotate around that position. So that's cool. So what we want to do is probably do the same thing down the bottom. We want to cut out that our kind of hand can sit through. So let's call this bottom, our elbow joint. Now I'm going to group these together. So I'm going to make I'm kind of, you know, setting up the hierarchy for how our animation is going to work. So I'm going to call this arm bottom, then arm top, actually shoulder bolt. I'm going to group that, because if I group that, that gives us that point. And I'm going to call this arm. I'm going to put arm top under there, and I'm going to put the arm bottom under there for now. So at least we've got some kind of hierarchy. We know we can animate this, and then arm bottom, we can grab that, animate that. So we've almost got some kind of IK going on at the moment. I'm not going to animate this using IK, but there's no reason why you couldn't. Okay, so let's save that, and let's just cut out this section for where the hand's going to go. So let's go to arm bottom. We'll just grab this again, shrink this down, in, and then we just want to kind of cut out a chunk. Let's do something like that. And then let's say subtract. There you go. So our hand will kind of sit in there, our little clasps. So our little, what do you call them? Grabbers. So I'm going to go into our side view. And what I'll do is create what do we want? We want a tube, and we'll do something like we did with the thing on the front, the cutout on the front. We can use a tube. Let's increase the inner and outer. So let's scale this down first. And what I want to do is probably say, like, slice this. Maybe we'll say like 160, and then I'm gonna rotate it -90. Maybe I want to kind of position it. You can't see inside of here, so it doesn't matter exactly where where it sits. But here's my sizes I've just got to. What I'll do is gonna copy that and then flip it, and that's our other pincer. And what we'll probably want to do is I'm going to group each of these objects, and we'll call this like a pincer. And I'm going to just move the axis to the top, both of these, and then that means we'll be able to rotate them. We might want to change the slice a bit. Let's change 140. Yeah, maybe 130. That just gives us enough kind of room to be able to, you know, move that around. Okay. We just want to line those up so that they're actually in the hand. There we go. So there's his pincers, and what we can do is we've got arm bottom. So let's, I guess for the minute, let's just get these and just stick them under here, and then we'll kind of play around a bit more with the hierarchy when we get into the animation. So that's our arm. And what we want to do is, as we did before, I'm going to save this as part 2 unbroken 2, just so I've got a backup version, and then I'm going to let's go to our Score shading with lines. Let's take a look. Maybe we can just say we can probably get away with, yeah, we'll put this to 2%. The arm bottom we'll put to 2%. And then we'll make both of those editable. And we've got our kind of cleaner mesh to work with, less dense. So with that, we can grab our arm and we want to make a duplicate of it. Now everything is symmetrical on the arm, so we can get away with just rotating it 180. And then just position it on the other side. So there is our arms. Let's just call these, I'll call this arm left and arm right. And this is all just so we're kind of set up for when it comes to animation. I'm going to put those underneath there. Actually, I'm going to stick them in the body. So if we do any animation to the body, obviously that will affect the arms, and that means we probably want the head in that body as well. So, you know, they're all set up, so the body twists, everything twists. So let's set that up, and then what I'll probably do is then group these bits. I'll call this body parts. Okay, and we'll do the legs. So the legs are pretty simple. I looked at photographs of these sort of like 50s toys, and the legs are always pretty basic actually in the scheme of things. So let's create a cylinder. Move this down and we'll rotate it in +Z. And this is kind of going to be the main rotation of where it would rotate at the waist. And let's give this a, I don't know, radius, say 67. And we'll make it 122 in the height. And then what we want to do is probably create a cube, and this is going to be the main part of the leg. Let's move that down and just resize that. Let's actually change this. Gonna make this 105. Oh, jumped out. 105 by 340 by 97. Okay. Let's just have a look at how that looks. We want that maybe about that long. Okay, I'm gonna copy that cylinder. Let's call this one waist. Then we're going to call this one knee. I'm going to move this down and I'm going to reduce the radius on this one to 50 and then just edge it forward so it is sticking out like a knee. And we'll position this, the whole thing, so we're kind of on one side. So motorbike again, and let's go to the volume builder, volume mesher. Put both of those inside each other. Let's position this underneath the waist. Set the PSR, so that's our position. And then let's throw all of those items in. And let's see what that looks like. And let's call this leg. We'll call it leg right. And let's change the voxel size to like 2, and then maybe add in a smooth layer, something like that. Might bring this knee in a little. Okay, yeah, then that's good. And then we want to add in the foot. So the foot is very basic as well, so that is just a cube. So let's bring in a cube, another one. It's down to the bottom, and let's make this like 160, 106, 230. I'm going to add a fillet on, so this is like really rounded, and we're going to have it kind of sitting at the front like that. Oh, he's rotated. Let's rotate that round, and then actually let's no, let's just position it by eye. Just put it about there. We'll bring it up to about there. No, that. See what that looks like. Yeah, I just think maybe the knee is actually a bit low, so it's just kind of what it's centered between the foot and the waist. So what I'm going to do is actually we'll add that adaptive on now, and we'll make that editable. I'm going to run the risk that I'm going to say, okay, I'm happy with that. Actually, no, there is something I want to change. I'm going to change that in a minute. We'll do this with the foot. We're going to get another volume builder and mesher. Put those inside each other. Add that to the foot. I'll call this foot. Put the cube in there, and we'll change this to like 2. Add a smoothing on, and what I want to do is just kind of cut out a section so this leg can kind of, the foot can slide forwards and that leg can move around inside. So let's just duplicate that cube, turn off that fillet, and let's just get something just to kind of block this out, just so we've got a gap. See, so we want something like this. Stick this in, and we'll subtract that. See, so we've just got this kind of cut out, because we're not going to see the back of this robot. And even if we did, I think if it was actually built for real, you'd probably have a little pin in here, and that's where it was able to rotate. Let's put that down to 1. Yes. And maybe just so we get a bit more smoothing, let's call this one foot main. Let's call this cut out. And then for the foot main, it's a little bit chunky around the edges here, so let's just update that subdivision. Maybe we'll make that like 20. That gets this a bit smoother. And then I don't want all the rounding at the bottom, so I'm going to copy this, turn the rounding off, make it like a little bit wider, and then I'm gonna kind of slice it off. Let's put that underneath and subtract. So we've kind of got this like base. Let's move it down a little bit, maybe like there. And then I want to give him like a little sole to the shoe. So I'm going to copy this, say sole. And let's see if I change this to intersect what we've got. So we've got this on the side, yeah. I'm not too sure I'm too keen on the height, but what we could probably do is let's add in another one of these, and I want to kind of just chop off the bottom, bring that back in, and we'll say subtract. So just kind of got this little sole to the shoe. Okay, I think one more thing I will do is group these together, and we'll call this foot. I'm going to bring this a little bit more forward actually, and then I'm just going to slightly change the shape of his leg. I'm going to make that editable, turn these off, and on the cube I'm going to go to the polygon mode. I'm going to get the loop cut selection. I'm just going to make a cut somewhere here, and I want to kind of define the bottom of the leg a little to show that it's kind of not just ending, but it's kind of moving into the foot. So I'm just going to select this here, this line, and I'm going to go into this front view. I'm just going to bring that forward slightly. I'm not that fussed that it's intersecting because we're not going to see it. See, that just kind of gives us a little bit more shape. Bring that in. Now I'm gonna say I'm happy with that. So file save. We've got that our thing set to 2%. So let's go to lines. Yeah, happy with that. Make that editable. Go to our foot. I'm gonna make both of those 2%. This is such a cool tool. I'm surprised I think I got into a bad habit of doing it the other way, so I think this is definitely better. Let's make that editable, and then we'll put the foot underneath the leg, and then we'll copy that and we'll call this leg left. Move that across. Oh, our feet are a little tiny bit too wide. Let's just make sure. Maybe we can just space these out. Oh, there we go. Let's just go into a front view. Just make sure they're still within the bounds. That hole that we cut out. Oh, there you go. Just enough space. So go to Gora shading and we'll go into a side view. So there's our robot build. Let's bring back in our plane. Bring that to the bottom. I'm going to need to increase the size of it because we've got much more going on now. So let's maybe make this 4000 by 4000. Let's move it back. Oh. 8000 by 8000. Okay, so there is our robot model. So the next step will be to get the materials on him, get the lighting on him, and get him animating. So I will do that in the next tutorial. I hope this was useful. I hope you found it interesting, and I will see you in the next one. I'll try and make it soon. Okay, thanks. Bye.